Greetings and welcome to Flanagan's EcoLogic. I am your host, Ted Flanagan, and today I'm joined by Rinaldo Brutoco. He's the founding president and CEO of the World Business Academy, a position that he has held for 38 years. Rinaldo is focused on the role that businesses should play in solving humanity's greatest challenges, on the responsibility of business in relation to the critical moral, environmental, and social concerns of the day. Rinaldo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Ted. I appreciate it.
It's very good to meet you. And I take it that you're in Santa Barbara right now as we speak?
Correct. Lucky me.
Lucky you. And I also take it that you're a Californian. You're born and raised in California?
No, I was not born here. I was raised here, but I was born in actually Toronto, Canada. So I'm an immigrant. And I believe that my naturalization process will continue to protect me despite the current administration. But if someone with an ICE badge comes in here in the middle of the interview, please call the police and tell them someone's come after me.
Okay, I promise I'll do that. I'm just overwhelmed by how much you've done and what you do. Before we get into the gist of it, who were your early influencers? Were your parents as active as you are? What spurred this your call to action?
Well, one of my early influencers was a very interesting man. Harold Willens was his name. You may remember he wrote a great book called The Trim Tab Factor, in which he said that the trim tab of a ship is what turns the rudder in the old wooden ship days, and the rudder then turns the ship. So he was arguing for business to be the trim tab factor. And he was successful in business. He was a mentor of mine. And it got me thinking that you could use business for good stuff. I originally was not in business. Originally, I was the guy with the huge beard, the 4-inch wide, the colorful tie, who was at the draft center in the Vietnam War era, and who actually was countercultural. So I wasn't expecting to get into business. But when I realized that the only way to really fundamentally change society for the better was to be in business, changing it, rather than throwing mud at business and hoping
it would change. That. Yeah, I really admire that focus. And you went and got a law degree. And was that how was that related to what you just said about being in business?
Well, I had 3 degrees. One was philosophy, which is by far the most useful. I did very well in economics. I took a degree in economics, and I was the best one in my class in school. But the law degree was a bag of tools I discovered. And originally, I used it to open the first consumer protection law center in the state of California. It's called the California Public Interest Law Center. I opened it in 1970 and ran it for a couple of years, did some huge cases, won them, and then decided that it wasn't suing people. Ralph Nader was a mentor of mine, and actually wrote the foreword to one of my nuclear books. And he convinced me that I should start my own Nader's Raiders because I wanted to start one for him. And you do your own. I did mine. So that's what. And then when I got into it, and I started winning I won the largest class action in the history of the United States, $130 million when I was a kid. And that was the day I decided I didn't want to sue anymore because I beat Bell. The biggest Bell subsidiary was Pacific. I beat the largest law firm in the state, Pillsbury, Madison, and Sutro. And I lost because there were 2 more rate increases that were getting put through by different lawyers while they were tying me up litigating the first one. So even though I actually got $130 million out of them and we distributed it in cash, it was like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't work. That suing thing. And I told Ralph, I'll do appreciation, Ralph. I better switch gears here because I can't stop what's going wrong by throwing sand in the other guy's gears. So what I got is build my better machine, to quote Bucky or paraphrase Bucky Fuller.
Yeah, it's great. It's great you have the Nader connection. I have a Nader connection we can go into offline. But you were the youngest lawyer to argue a case before the Supreme Court at the time, right?
California Supreme Court, yeah.
Supreme Court.
Which was then and still is a better court than the U.S. by far.
Let's dig in. Your resume, as I have alluded to, is to me overwhelming. It's just it's absolutely fantastic. And you've led so many organizations, and you continue to write books and give speeches and write articles. 8 current positions, according to your website: the Dorison Corporation, H2 Clipper, World Business Academy, Shangri-La Group, Omega Point Institute, Seven Oaks Ranch, Live Well Brands, Optimist Daily. How do you get your arms around all of those positions at the same time?
Well, actually, so I've always had two parallel careers. So you mentioned that I've been a CEO of the Academy for 38, 39 years now. That's a full-time job. Being the CEO of this Academy is a full-time job. But I also had to pay the bills. So I started my own merchant bank in 1981 with $1,000 I borrowed. And I built it up over the years. So actually, I'm down right now. I used to have 10 active businesses and two or three active nonprofits. And I've actually gotten to the point now where I've got down fewer businesses, which I like. And I don't, because I'm not a venture capitalist, I don't sell things because it's convenient or the time has come up. I'm patient capital. I wait till it's appropriate to sell them or continue operating them indefinitely, which I've done many times as well. One of my large public companies I ran for 29 years because it was the right thing to do all along until it wasn't anymore. But my point to you is this: how do you do all those? The way any old-fashioned conglomerate would do it was it would have key people in each of the divisions, the subsidiaries. I do that too. The difference is I treat nonprofits identically to how I treat for-profits. So I don't ask, can I make money at this or not? I ask, is this something I'm supposed to do? If it is, I trust I will make a living doing it. I'll give you an example in a minute. And I just go forward and do it. So I did a lot of research on food 35 years ago. And I realized that I like being organic. So I got into the organic food industry 35 years ago. Turned out it was a great business decision, and I'm still in it.
Yeah.
So I produce very popular organic food and cosmetic items that are sold widely and have been for years on Amazon. So I'm increasingly interested in what I can do that helps society. And if a for-profit has to get involved, in other words, to get products out there so people will use them, then I'll do it. My preference is to write about it in a book, an article, or an op-ed, and let that speak for and stimulate someone else. Yeah. That's my preference. But yeah. I manage it just like you would any conglomerate. And we have a corporate group here where I sit. And we're always looking at what we need to do next to help society.
This notion of a shifting human consciousness ties right in with that, right?
Yeah, exactly right. In fact, when I started this with Willis Harman, who did you ever hear the name Willis Harman? You know who
I don't
Willis?
think so. No, I don't believe so.
Look him up. He was an amazing guy. He invented artificial intelligence. He was the guy. So he taught it at Stanford University in the EE department. He was an electrical engineer. After he invented it, Stanford Research Institute, then in its heyday, grabbed him, made him the chief futurist in residence for 16 years until he left to join me when I started the Academy. And we both made a deal that neither one of us would ever charge the Academy, so he didn't and I didn't. And he had to go get a day job. Like, I have a day job. And he did. Well, Willis Harman taught me, and he was a mentor, obviously, along with people like Harold Willens, who did the trim tab factor, and a number of others, including, I would say, Ralph Nader. Even though I didn't follow in his path, we stayed friends because he respected the fact I use business to change things for the better. Well, when Willis and I started, he said, what do you think has to happen for business to succeed at turning society into a better place? And I said, well, number one, shift the consciousness of existing business leadership from that of a predator to that of a steward, because you are responsible if you're the steward. Yeah. Change the consciousness of young people going into business, particularly our business schools, so they see themselves entering a noble profession. Because when I entered business, every metaphor was about the jungle and about military analogies. And I said, you're not allowed to do things in the temple you do in the jungle. Yeah. And the third was shift the consciousness of the public at large, so it puts its money where its deeper values are. And when you do that, business will turn on a dime. So each of the things we've done in the Academy over the last 38, 39 years has all been in pursuit of one or more of those objectives to the present day. That's true. And when an opportunity comes up to do that, we jump in, even if it means we have to start a nonprofit and spin it off to be its own company, which we've done numerous times.
That's really great. Let's talk nuclear. Let's dive right into some of the energy issues that I'm most interested in. It sounds like you've been a strong anti-nuclear advocate all of your career.
Yes, and I'd love to send you a paper that I wrote for Jim Hansen, which he never responded to, but I can honestly say I have not received one correction to a single footnote or to anything in the paper. It's 100% accurate. And what it does is it looks at why nuclear will not play a meaningful role in greening the planet or the biosphere, and why it's a terrible technology, which I think it is, why it's the most expensive technology, which it is, and why it's failing around the globe, even as government tries to prop it up.
Yeah. Well, and it's been discouraging to me that the environmental community has been so split on the nuclear issue. You and I talked about Amory Lovins, my former boss and mentor, and your friend and colleague, and he's been steadfast in his anti-nuclear position. But we've heard so many people that I greatly respect, like a Jim Hansen, suggesting that we've got to have all of the above in terms of clean energy solutions in order to solve the climate crisis.
I think what happened for Jim is Jim fell down a rabbit hole. Remember, 95% of everybody who works in nuclear works for the nuclear industry. Almost nobody works in the other side of the aisle, so to speak. I've been asked and have done interviews with with major legal publications where I was the only guy who could speak to nuclear from the other side.
Yeah.
And everybody else was stacked in favor of it. And I've done things for the American Bar Association PLI Institute on stuff. And the bottom line is, if you dig into nuclear with the same rigor that I know Jim is capable of, and he opens himself up to other points of view, which I'd be more than happy to discuss with him myself, I believe he could be convinced that what he's been saying clearly is wrong. And I think the history proves that by now. So I would love to talk, because I'm not just against nuclear because of waste disposal issues, which have not gone away. They're worse.
Right.
I'm sitting in Santa Barbara, California, downwind from a nuclear power plant that is already past its 40-year useful life. I've tried to close the sucker. I think it's got an embrittled central mechanism. Its reactor vessel, its core is embrittled, I'm pretty sure. And on top of that, it's sitting on 4 active fault lines. So, I mean, it's like any way you look at it, and that thing is upwind from me, which is not a good place to be. So I'm really down on nuclear for a whole variety of reasons. And you may or may not know, I was very active in closing San Onofre. We were able to figure out why it went from normal operation to, full blast, close it down. And the answer had to do with the heat exchanger. And what they did is and there was a very big lawsuit, at least 2 guilty parties, one of whom was Department of Water and Power. And basically what they did is they contracted, in order to squeeze an extra 12% profit out of the reactor, they contracted to change the sizing of the little glass filaments in the heat exchanger. Now, that particular unit is a $650 million piece of a nuclear reactor plant. And it's clear you are not allowed to touch it unless you are just replacing it with like kind. They not only didn't replace it with like kind, what they did is they tried to increase the yield. And what they did is, and the way that the heat exchanger works, you think of thousands and thousands of little minuscule glass fingerlings. On this side is nuclear tainted water. On this side is fresh water. The heat gets exchanged, turns into steam, and that's how the reactor works. It blew simultaneously. All the fingerlings, because what they didn't realize is when they thinned the glass wall of each of those little fingerlings, they created cavitation occurred. And when cavitation occurs on a very thin glass membrane, it'll rupture. And that's exactly why San Onofre blew. So it went from clean operations to shut the plant down in a matter of like seconds.
Yeah. When I was at the New York Power Authority, we ran the Indian Point reactors just up the Hudson from Manhattan. And had that reactor had the kind of accident that happened at Chernobyl or at Fukushima, New York City would have had to have been evacuated for the next 40 years. I mean, as Amory used to say, using nuclear power to produce electricity is like using a chainsaw to cut butter. It's
not. And you know what's amazing is we have this spectacular nuclear fusion operation that operates for free every day called the sun.
Yeah.
So what we ought to be thinking about is how to tap the sun more efficiently, not replace it.
Yeah. Well, let's hit on small modular nuclear reactors that seem to be on the rise right now. And in fact, you've seen this. A lot of the data centers are even looking to have their own small modular nuclear reactor, as if that technology is much better than the regular conventional large scale technology. Talk about SMRs.
First of all, as you know, TMI has contracted the second reactor that didn't blow in the TMI incident to Microsoft in order for them to have predictable, steady power with no spikes, which you need if you're going to run a data center, or if you're going to run, you're going to Bitcoin mine, or if you're going to, in the case of Microsoft, do AI. Well, what you will find if you look into that is that NMRs, modular nuclear reactors, MMRs, are not proven yet, first of all. And they do have a lot of the characteristics of the old ones. They're just smaller. I mean, some people call them pocket nukes or neighborhood nukes. But there's one thing you should stay and look at, which is that Bill Gates has poured literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into this technology. And the first one in the Western world has not been delivered that works yet, just for openers. Okay, there are a couple that are operating in Russia. And I understand there might be one in China operating right now. But who knows what they're doing? And the fact that Gorbachev himself, Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, wrote the endorsement on the fly leaf of my book was a direct result of his experience at Chernobyl. And it created a lifelong awareness for him that for some reason other people missed. And he was a pretty bright guy. So I'm sharing with you that it's not only a bad technology, it's being pushed because it's practically an arm of the US government. And that's how we got nuclear in the first place. Who are we kidding? It wasn't to make light bulbs go on.
So there's the danger factor is still there, and not just in waste, but in the fuel cycle and in the connection with weaponry and all. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's talk hydrogen. You've been a big advocate of green hydrogen, I presume.
Correct.
Are you thinking hydrogen primarily for the transport sector?
No, I'm thinking of, first of all, hard to abate sectors, cement and steel. You have to use hydrogen. It's the only thing will give you a hot enough flame if you want to get rid of doing coke. So that's run off the bat. Hard to. Number two, I'm looking at coastal vessels. So we have a ferry boat in the Bay Area, the San Francisco area, which I had something to do with early on, and we've got one over in Norway, and more will be coming. Number three, we have the first 29 hydrogen-powered locomotives have been delivered. One in California, you should probably know, one up in Canada, 27 in France and Germany. And the only thing, and then of course you know that 18-wheelers have to be hydrogen. You can't do with trucks, with batteries, it's too heavy. And you know that cars will be fine with it if they have it at a reasonable price. What's holding back hydrogen is the price of hydrogen. So here's a statistic. It's $1.50 a kilogram to make hydrogen from methane, for example. We'll go to brown hydrogen first, gray hydrogen. They're selling it to me at $36 a kilogram at the pump. When I first started driving hydrogen cars, it was $12 a kilogram. Why is it $36 a kilogram if it's $1.50 to make? Quick answer. Obviously, the anti-competitive laws are not being enforced. There is monopoly pricing going on. That's the only way you get those kind of differentials. And I think the Attorney General of the state of California needs to look into it because it's a clear violation of the state equivalent of the Clayton and the Sherman Acts. So when I saw that, I said, okay, if I've got to do something in hydrogen because the rest of the world hasn't decided it likes it yet, what am I going to focus on? And I decided to focus on delivery. So we call ourselves the hydrogen delivery company. Now, we don't want to ever own anything like a pipe or a hydrogen manufacturing facility or electrolyzers. What we want to do is be a technology enabling company, which we are. We've invented numerous patented technologies for moving hydrogen, both liquid hydrogen and gaseous hydrogen. And we want to license people all over the world to use those technologies at very little profit to me so that more people get on with doing it because we have to do it faster. So we have licensees in Spain, Canada, active partners in Germany, doing a lot of work in France, of course, California. So we're working all the time on showing people that you can deliver hydrogen in economic ways that cuts through the Gordian knot of supply control and thereby lowers the price of hydrogen dramatically. Now, green hydrogen, which is what you asked about, is the future. If you read a report that came out of United Arab Emirates even 3.5, 4 years ago, they said the only fuel export product of the future for us will be green hydrogen. Saudis are saying the same thing. Okay, why? Because there's no reason not to have green when the price of electrolyzers has come down, which they have. And you have a situation, these are actual numbers, 75% the cost of a kilogram of hydrogen today is the input cost of the electricity, okay? So if you can find a place where you got really cheap electricity and water, you can make hydrogen for next to nothing. So wind, you should never be paying more than 5 cents a kilowatt to get electricity, certainly 6. Solar in the right place, anywhere between 1.5 and 4 cents a kilowatt. Well, when you make hydrogen from that cost-effective source of electricity, you can make it so cheap it competes with fossil fuels. The problem is, often those places are far from where the market is. So Saudi Arabia and UAE are a long way from Germany. Morocco is a long way from France. Scotland is a long way even by boat from Germany. So our job in that division of our operation, which is the for-profit division, we basically create technology and then we release it to multiple licensees. And that's starting to happen very actively around the world right now.
Let's talk about the current administration and what the current administration, the presidential administration, is doing to all of our great progress with clean energy.
What isn't it doing to hurt green energy? I mean, I've never seen such a concerted effort. It's a parade of fools. They don't have a clue what they're doing. They don't realize how they're hobbling our economy. They're abandoning the future of energy to China and other countries. Like, for example, Spain is way ahead in Europe on hydrogen, and Europe's way ahead of the US on hydrogen. We were the leader. Our job has got to be to catch up and get on with it. And we will. For example, in a country like Germany, where it's highly electrified, okay? 50% of all the locomotives run on diesel. Why? Because you can't afford to put an electrical line on something where there's not enough people going down it every day. You want to go from Berlin to Paris? No problem. We'll do it at high speed with electrical rail. But if you want to go around the corner and deliver some product, or you want to have a switcher in the yard, those trains, those locomotives are diesel 50% of the time. And there's no way to change them out because it's not economic to electrify that line. You have to go to hydrogen, which is the only thing you can do. And that's why there are 29 of them running right now.
Now you've said China has chosen to go electric, and the United States and the current administration, drill baby drill, we're back to oil and gas. But why is the business community going along with that?
Well, actually, the oil community is not. The oil community has not been doing drill baby drill because if you've noticed, the price of oil has fallen. They have a demand problem right now. So even when our administration is backward, if you build and drive a car in Europe or China that's electric, you cut into the fuel market. Okay, so even though we're dragging our feet, the rest of the world's going electric. And as it does, the demand for fossil fuel is beginning to drop. And it will drop inevitably. I mean, how many people wanted to buy a horse and buggy in 1950?
Yeah. So are you optimistic that that the business community will actually lead the I don't want to call it the policy, but that will lead the practical implementation of renewables?
Yeah, it's happening now. You were talking about NMRs, right? The modular nuclear reactors, MNR.
Yeah.
Okay. In the last 5 years, not one company has used a modular nuclear reactor to power its server farm, its Bitcoin mining farm, or its AI farm. In almost every case, they've selected a fuel cell using hydrogen. Why? Because a fuel cell with hydrogen is 100% reliable. There's never any power surges. There's never any spikes. You can't take the power from the grid and pump it through an AI facility and not get gibberish. So everybody's been, all the smart companies, they've been doing it for 5 years. They knew about that. Now, they want massive amounts of power. You go rent TMI. But if you want to run the typical data center, you're going to go with a fuel cell assisted microgrid, which is basically you're running it on hydrogen. And we have been writing at the Academy for more than a decade now. The future of the electrical business is fuel cell assisted microgrids. And so we always take this dichotomy, which we find hilarious. It's a false dichotomy. Is it electrons or is it molecules? Meaning, is it electricity or hydrogen? The answer is both, working in tandem. We have 3,300 distribution points in the state of California for electricity, meaning substations. That's what a substation is, right? Take power from the grid, drop it down, pump it out to the public in your neighborhood, right? That's what they do. If every one of those substations would put it in a fuel cell with capability of using hydrogen. They could instantly lower the pressure on the grid because every molecule they would produce from the sun in that location. So it starts as a microgrid. You start creating electricity and you start reducing the demand on the grid until one day you cut the rope, the umbilical cord, you don't need the grid. And as you do that, you're building up your capacity, plus you avoid a massive one-day switchover. You switch over one substation at a time.
You're suggesting, which is music to my ears, that logic will prevail. I think you've said, you've quoted, nothing is powerful as an idea. Nothing is as powerful as an idea whose time has come. And so you're suggesting to me and to our listeners that the oil and gas, the drill baby drill, is just a bunch of talk, but the business community sees the writing on the wall and is taking a different direction.
They do, but remember how the vast majority of the business community is very, very greedy and short-sighted. Very, very short-sighted. You know, people come to the marketplace to see what they can sell today, not tomorrow, usually. So what's happening is the fossil fuel companies see this incredible political opportunity. Mind you, that's the wealthiest industry by far in the history of the world, and they get subsidies from the U.S. government every year, 16, 18 billion last year. And there'll be that much or more next year. In a year when there'll be no subsidies for wind or solar. So, or electric vehicles probably. So what's going on is a lot of oil and gas companies are taking advantage of an opportunity.
Yeah.
Where they can harvest more profits, pay less tax on the profits they harvest, and delay what they perceive as the inevitable until they have to worry about it, which they don't right now, because the way they look at it, they got Trump for a couple more years. Well, so that's what's dragging it down.
Yeah, yeah. And you've talked about this clean energy moonshot in California, 100% renewable power in California, no oil, no nuclear, change out the entire power system, get rid of the wires, go into microgrids, honeycomb network of microgrids.
Right.
That's what we've got to keep our eye on, right?
Yeah. You know, and if you take a look, there's one of the fellows of the academy is a guy named Lorenzo Christoph. Dr. Christoph was you know Lorenzo? Yeah. So he was the long-term analyst for CAISO. To where should the grid go in 10 years in the future was this challenge. And he finally decided there should be no grid in 10 years. And he wrote this paper, which I'll send you. It's a very short one, on how you do microgrids as a honeycomb. And there was one footnote where he said, the only thing we can't figure out is how to port power between microgrids if it's isolated in the middle of nowhere by itself.
Yeah.
So I said, I know how to do that. I called him up, wrote a paper, and now we distribute the two papers together because what I did is I talked about fuel cell supported microgrids, which is exactly what he now believes is right.
Yeah, yeah. So closing comments. And again, we could talk for a long time. How do you maintain your energy level, Rinaldo?
You know, it's like, how fast can you run if they're gaining on you? I mean, I've been at this all my adult life, and the resistance has never been greater. Yeah. The technological opportunity has never been greater. The ability to make enormous wealth from switching of a fuel system is right in front of everybody's eyes. And we're in the process of destroying the biosphere so badly, we may not survive as a civilization. I mean, I think that that's a very realistic question now. So if Western civilization, as you know it, is on the brink of instability to the point of non-survival, which I think the case can be made it is, then it's time for people to wake up. And everybody, not just me, has to have the energy, because what we leave behind is a mark of who we are. And right now, I don't feel we are very good if we're leaving behind the biosphere to our children and grandchildren. It's not the biosphere we inherited. Yeah. And that quote by Victor Hugo is absolutely correct. You know, nothing is as powerful as an idea as time has come. And I think that if we understood it well enough, we would see the ability to make money, which is what I do in my career. Every time I can't get somebody to finance one of my ideas, I do it myself. And I made a lot of money by accident doing that, you know, because I wasn't trying to make money. I was trying to get something good to happen. Well, that is important, because if that's true and more businesses start to realize it, then we turn the corner.
Thanks so much for what you're doing. Thanks for your time on this podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.